Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Another ex-policeman close to the security detail of murdered Haitian president has been arrested. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 7th March 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. A former police officer charged with the security detail of murdered Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has been handed over to Haitian authorities by Dominican Republic authorities. More in this HGP Nightly News Regional Bulletin.
Tanis Philomi was arrested in the Dominican Republic. He has denied any involvement in the assassination of President Moïse on July 7, 2021. Moïse was shot dead by gunmen who entered his home in Port-au-Prince. Questions have been raised as to where his security team was at the time. Haitian police allege a hit squad of mainly foreign mercenaries, 26 Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans carried out the killing. Bullet casings were found strewn across the ground around the property, but the only 2 people shot were President Moïse and his wife, raising suspicion that some members of the security team may have been in on the attack. The president, who suffered 12 bullet wounds, died at the scene. His wife, Martine, was seriously injured but survived. Mr. Philomi is the latest in a long line of suspects to be arrested in connection with the case, but the investigation into who ordered the murder has made little progress in the 8 months since the assassination.
A High Court judge in Barbados has reserved her judgment on preliminary issues in a lawsuit challenging the makeup of the Parliament of Barbados.
Lawyers on both sides concluded their submissions before Madam Justice Cicely Chase QC today, when the case continued in case management during a virtual sitting of the court. Former Attorney General Adriel Brathwaite is asking that the President's decision to reconvene Parliament be quashed on the basis that all but 3 of the 21 senators have been appointed since Parliament resumed in February. However, the country's legislative business in the Senate has come to a halt in light of the lawsuit.
Still on Barbados, in the next few weeks, there will be a full proposal to end the common entrance examination.
That's the assurance of Director of Education Reform in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Dr. Ida Mae Denny, as she spoke during the estimates debate in the House of Assembly today.
Subject to the approval of Cabinet, we are proposing that, having had the common entrance for the last time this year, that is in 2022, that means that our last set of students who will transition to the secondary school by virtue of that exam will happen in September 2022. We are proposing that the first set of students who transition under the new structure will transition in September 2023. So school year 2023-24 is identified as the first year that the new structure comes into being. It means that the students who are currently in class 3 at the primary level will be the first students to transition under the new structure.
In another item, the national vaccination program could reach its target of vaccinating 75 to 80% of Barbados' eligible population before the end of the year.
That's the view of the program's co-coordinator, Major David Clark, who said that the numbers were slowly but surely inching towards that goal set by Prime Minister Mia Mottley late last year. According to Wednesday's statistics, 160,288 persons have received at least the first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, while 149,692 people are fully vaccinated. That represents 55.2% of the entire population and 70.2% of the eligible population. Major Clark tells Barbados Today officials are working on an initiative which he believes will bolster those figures by at least 10%.
I think we're just about to roll a strategy with the Ministry of Education. I think once we do that, because we're 50% of the eligible of the young people we're 55% between 12 to 18. And I think once we roll out that strategy, we'll probably get another 10%.
In other news, allegations of sexual misconduct between a male teacher and female students at a local learning institution have made their way to the office of the Ministry of Education. Jason Darius of the DBS News World reports.
The case has landed on the desk of the Ministry of Education's Chief Education Officer, Dr. Fiona Philip Meyer, who has sent a stern warning denouncing acts of sexual misconduct in the island's education system.
We are confronted with a situation that is rather of a sensitive nature because it involves one of our schools. We are keenly aware that all procedures have been followed in terms of dealing with the matter as a matter of urgency. There is on our part zero tolerance for any unacceptable behavior within any one of our institutions. And so we continue to work with the necessary authorities as well as our counseling teams to ensure that everything possible is done to bring the matter and resolve it in a manner that is acceptable as well as fair in terms of the delivery of any measures thereafter.
The Chief Education Officer maintains that the ministry has moved swiftly to ensure that due diligence and attention to detail were paramount.
We have moved urgently with this matter, and so we just want to thank all individuals who have contributed to the success in terms of the processes involved. And as we move forward, we would like to reiterate that there is zero tolerance for unacceptable behavior on the part of any adult within our education system.
In recent times, the public has expressed dissatisfaction about how matters of sexual misconduct were handled, placing into question the Ministry of Education's ability to handle such cases. Despite this, however, the Chief Education Officer has assured that every effort will be spent in ensuring that the situation comes to a conclusion. For the DBS News World, I am Jason Darius.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
COVID-19 restrictions will be relaxed come Monday, March 7th, as new measures will go into effect in Trinidad and Tobago. The measures were announced by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley in the House of Representatives on Friday last. Mahalia Joseph Wharton of TTT News reports.
Now in the endemic phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley listed the public health measures that will be eased. Among them, public transport resumes at 100% capacity. Families will no longer be required to be masked while in their vehicles or vessels. The removal of restrictions with respect to the length of time and number of people at religious places of worship and the number of people permitted at graveside funeral services will be unrestricted. However, mask wearing remains mandatory. He added that safe zones for vaccinated or exempted persons and children under the age of 12 will be allowed to operate at 75% capacity.
For unvaccinated nationals returning to Trinidad and Tobago, a reduction in the quarantine time would be applicable. Quarantine time will be reduced from 14 days to 7 days, with discharge taking place on the receipt of a negative PCR test on the 7th day.
The Prime Minister said the national quarantine time for contacts of positive cases will be reduced from 14 to 10 days and the isolation time for positive patients from 21 days in all categories to 10 days for persons with no symptoms and 13 days for those with moderate to severe disease. As it pertains to public gatherings, Dr. Rowley said the number of people in groups of no more than 25 is now permissible. Team sports and contact sports will also recommence.
Provided that we do not have dangerous changes in the COVID-19 position, we will permit all children to return to physical schooling in term 3. The Ministry of Education will continue to put out the necessary guidelines to safely manage this process. As of Monday, 7th March 2022, the public service will return to full service and all public servants will be expected to return to work as normal.
Additionally, the Prime Minister said the Ministry of Health will be presenting a national pathway for the consolidation of the public health service that would see the return of the health system and, by extension, health services.
A structured, risk-based approach will be adopted to gradually reduce the footprint of the parallel healthcare system and regularizing the hospital system. The proposal will be implemented on a phased basis based on real-time risk assessment starting with point 14.
He said the Minister of Health will give further details next week. Mahalia Joseph Wharton, TTT News.
And finally, a police officer in Guyana is being hauled before the law court to answer charges of dangerous driving which claimed the lives of 2 young people after whom he was in hot pursuit. Gordon Mosley of News Source Guyana has that report.
Police Corporal Lawrence Carmichael appeared in court this morning on the heavy police guard and was charged for causing the death of mechanic Christopher Bangwandat and high school student Sharita Prasad. Carmichael is accused of driving a Guyana Police Force vehicle in a dangerous manner during a high-speed chase of the car being driven by the mechanic, causing an accident that claimed the lives of the mechanic and his teenage passenger. In court today, the accused was not allowed to enter a plea to the indictable charge. After the details of the charge were read to him, the magistrate granted the accused bail in the sum of $1.5 million. He was represented by attorneys Dexter Todd, Dexter Smart, and Devon Cox. Outside of the magistrate's court, relatives of the 2 dead youths gathered in protest and demanded justice. They said their children would have been alive today had they not been chased by the police in a dangerous manner.
And finally, on the international front,
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.